Waheguru Ji Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Fateh Ji. Welcome to another session of Coach Gurbani. Um, so we are missing a few people from the last couple of conversations. So the context, I suppose, needs to be set a little bit because we have some new individuals. So we've essentially been talking about the idea of Haume and Hukam and the relationship between the two, if any. Um, and we've been exploring Haume to a larger degree than we have Hukam. And I think what we have done so far is we have talked about the etymology of the word. कि जड़ा Haume लफ्ज़ है. Until Eileen comes, I'll mix it up with Punjabi or with the etymology of the word. We talked at length about the fact that there was really no suitable substitute in the English language for Haume, and therefore we should really just refer to it as Haume. It's a very unique concept that Guru Nanak has given us. It also does not map back into the Indian systems of thought. We talked about that at length, so I don't want to sort of regurgitate that, but we came to the conclusion, I think, all of us, at least I did, that Haume was a very unique concept. It is not ahankara, it is not ego, it is not sin, it is not pride, but is a composite of two words, how and me. One referring to the sense of self, and the other referring to the sense of possessiveness, me. So this together makes for a unique experience. We then talked a little bit about how me is really our conditioned self, that it is actually created by creation itself. How me is something that we are all, I suppose, blessed or cursed with, depending on how you want to look at it. We also then talked about, and I think Eileen gave us a rather unique way of looking at Haume as being self-absorbed, self-centered, and we spoke a little bit about the disease of narcissism. So that's what we talked about when it came to Haume, and I'm doing this from memory, so I may miss out a few things. But then we came to Hukam, and when we talked about Hukam, some of the things that we touched on in our discussions were, is Hukam really the equivalent of what we understand to be a law of nature or divine law, or is it something more? We talked about a little, and Harvinder helped me here because I might be forgetting stuff. We talked about how does one understand Hukam? How does one know that one is walking in Hukam? Since that is the instruction from Guru Nanak, Hukam Rajai Chalana. There was also the issue of who is this Rajai, Jide Hukam Chalna. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were a couple of things that came up which I wanted to actually revisit. One of the things that, and Veer Gurjeet Singh is not here, unfortunately, I hope he'll join us, but one of the things that he said was that if there is a hukam, then there is a hukmi sitting out there. It's somebody's hukam. And, we were towards the end of our discussion at that point, and I had thought a little bit about it, and I wanted to actually ask him that question, but I will throw this out. Because when you suggest that there is a hukmi out there, you're immediately creating a sense of separateness, that there is something out there that is actually issuing this hukum. Whereas I think our sense of, the Mool Mantra, for example, is that ultimate reality is a self-organizing, self-created system, if you want to call it that. So I wanted to ask him that. But anyhow, here's what I hope we can accomplish. I'm just making suggestions. Feel free to add to these. But there are two things that I want to talk about a little bit. One is, rather than getting caught up in too much esoteric stuff, I want each one of you to be able to at least explain to us what Hukam means to you. How do you know that you're following Hukam? Uh, do you see any relationship between Hukam and Haume? If so, what is it? The other, so when you talk about this, I want you to consider the following. Again, is Hukam just a law of nature, or is it something more as well? Two, is Hukam related to the future? Uh, Future possibilities, infinite possibilities. Is it the field of all possibilities, so to speak? Uh, but more importantly, how would you explain this to an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old? Because I think it's important for us, for our own clarity, to be able to do that. And so with that, I'm going to jump to Dilpreet. Dilpreet Singh ji, how would you explain it to your daughter?
Right. I think last time we had some very good discussion, and I took some notes and I did some research. So let me see if I can share something. So I was also struggling with the to understand Hukam, as you said. I went back to our Mool Mantar, and I was trying to see that what is the Mool Mantar giving us, or what hint it is giving. So if we read Professor Sahib Singh's definition, for ik ओंकार, he says अकाल पुरख एक है, then सतनाम he says जिसका नाम होंद वाला है. So जो सृष्टि दा रचनहार है, and then for कर्ता he says जो सृष्टि दा रचनहार है, and for पुरख जो सब विच व्यापक है. Now this is where I think we have to understand this concept, that he is present in everyone and he is the creator. And then in the last discussion, the Chinese theory of Tao or Dao was also mentioned, right? So I went back
Mm-hmm.
and I did
Mm-hmm.
some research on that. So now, see, if I will read what I have here, it says Tao can be roughly thought of as follow: as the flow of the universe, or some
Mm-hmm.
essence or pattern behind the natural world that keeps the universe balanced and ordered. Now, when I see Guru Nanak's Hukam, right, if I replace this word Dao by Hukam, and then if I read it, Hukam can be roughly thought of as a flow of the universe, or some essence or patterns behind the natural world that keeps the universe balanced and ordered. Now we were talking about Hukam, Naam, and it says Hukmi Hovan Akar, Hukmi Hovan Ji, and then it says Name hi te sab kuch hoa, Naam ke tare sagle jant. So these are some synonymous terms, and I think this is a very good definition which describes that what Hukam is. And then it also says that it is not the concept of duality, as you mentioned, that okay, if we say that hukmi and somebody is giving the hukam and somebody is following, then this duality comes. And now it goes on and says that it is the greater whole from which all the individual elements of the universe derive. So I think Guru Nanak Dev Ji is also going into the similar lines, that yes, we extend that greater whole, and in combination all these elements us, we create the greater whole. So greater whole, that and Guru Nanak Dev Ji also says that the creator is in the creation, that he submerged himself, or he has divided himself into the particles, and he is in his creation, he is not separate out. So I think that is the concept. If we, and then it also goes on the same theory, I think it is in line, that it is ineffable, it has ineffable qualities that prevent it from being defined or expressed in words. It can, however, be known or experienced, and its principles can be followed or practiced. So now, if we go with that, the principles of our Mool Mantra are, we can only understand and we can practice them, but it will be hard to define each and every principle which is there. So that is where I think it says Hukam na bujhiya jai. So that is where I think we have to say that we cannot explain it in words, but we can understand its principles and we can practice it and we can live by it. I think we'll come to a second round then, if that.
Okay, no. I think that is a very important point that you raised, because I think this is a much more satisfying way of looking at Hukam, to think of it as the flow of the universe, and it refers to underlying patterns that keep sort of order and balance. So one could say then that the universe or creation has certain habits. It reacts in certain ways. It does certain things. And as you said, it is ineffable, but it can be sensed, it can be felt, it can be lived. So the question then is this where it is tied into Haume? Is there another way of knowing? Is there another way of understanding other than what we are accustomed to through Haume? So I'm going to ask Eileen if she wants to sort of take the point from here.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I think there's a relationship in the sense, and we had this one aspect of the discussion last time, and I think it carried on the blog as well, about your actions and free will as it relates to Hukum. And I think that that's where Hame becomes related, because I think that, or at least my understanding of the importance of Hukum and the importance of Hame is that when you're presented with a set of circumstances, this way of the world, this inexplicable, set of situations, you then have choices about how to act, right? It's manmuk or gurmuk, and so this is where Hame comes into play, because as you are able to focus on either a materialistic goal or a spiritual guru-centered goal, that's when Hame becomes important. And also, I think there's related concepts, right? Like how do I control my destiny? How do I, again, in that action, what do I value? What's my end result? Is it a material gain? Is it a spiritual gain? All of those factors that come into that choice are in there when you're thinking about home.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Because you talk about, I was thinking as you were suggesting, you're faced with choices all the time, and it seems to me that Haume is basically the choices of a conditioned self. In other words, you're very likely to make the same choices that you've been making out of sheer habit. And so you're going to continue to create the same sort of circumstance that you have in the past. And I think I'm sort of suggesting that free will perhaps lies in the fact that you can say no to that conditioned habit and decide to make a different choice for change. It seems to me that there might be some relationship there. Let's go to Gagandeep Singh and see what he has to say about this. Anji Gagandeep Singh ji.
I'm Gaganpreet Singh.
I'm sorry, Gaganpreet.
मैं लगे शायद और कोई गगनदीप होए थे.
अच्छा नहीं, I apologize. I didn't pick up on the Preet yet.
So for a little while I've started taking words from Gurbani and started looking at really our older definitions, because for a while we've been trying to find new definitions of words, and then for a while I've started realizing that we might be ignoring all the research that other Gursikhs have done for hundreds of years. And if you could bear with me, I'm trying to share what I understood of this, and it could be complete garbage. But here's the thing: is um, if we look at ourselves and know who we are, we call ourselves a Jeev, right? The being that came to the world. And then Guru Sahib says that you know, Ya Jug Mein Eke Ko Aaya, Janmat Mohyo Mohni Maya, and where that's and like we start also reading in Asakivar that as soon as the being comes into the world, it gets divided into two: the man and the chit, or the antakaran, or the atam ram, or the the inner being. And the man keeps looking outside in meh, while the chit is the one that acts in hukam, that keeps the breath going. It sounds very very Vedic, very yogic, but just stay with me for a second. And it's also, you hear this from older Gursikhs. They say, the chit that has suksham home, that does ha, that because of me you exist. And it's the man that thinks it has complete free will, and it exists in this, it creates this whole universe around itself and acts in meh, that I am doing this, I am doing that. And now when you start looking at hukam, and this is what I have kind of understood, is hukam is the manifestation of shabad. Shabad is, you know the sat or the sach, that is at the tur, wherever Guru Sahib got the Shabad from, or Shabad is the truth. When it manifests as Hukam, just like it manifests as Hukam with our Chit, or the Atam Ram that gives us the breath. It never forgets to do that. It manifests in the sun as it gives us the light. It manifests in the earth as it rotates around the sun. It manifests with the man, in the sense that we do our meh, but and live in this illusion of free will, but it will, you know then we start, and if we look at free will, the right word, I think, from Bani around that is karam, karam kartut, that we think we are doing something. And when that man stops doing its meh, unites with the chit, and then starts listening to the Shabad, right? Because even when we are inward focused, and start listening to the Shabad, we still are in awe that we are something in that journey. But then when we start listening to the Shabad and start living a life where we take the Shabad as the guide, both the Shabad that we read from Bani and the Shabad that we may or may not hear from within. When we start taking that as a guide, and it manifests in our life, then we are living in Hukam. It's not that there is going to be some sort of preordained order that will come to us, but it is living in conjunction or manifesting that truth in life is what Hukam would be. Just like the sun is manifesting the truth in its life, Guru Sahib keeps giving the example of the kid in the womb is manifesting the truth in its life, and hence it is in Hukam, and is doing Simran, is living the Shabad, and hence is in Hukam. So I think Hukam di raza vich chalna is to know that you are now manifesting the Shabad, and Karam Kartut, which Karam Karde Rehna, is to not know that you are living in the manifestation of Hukam, but you are still a manifestation of the true Hukam, but you are limited to your small, self-created world around your man. So that's, kind of the picture that I have in the mind. And I'm like, I'm here because Gauraviji told me this will help me break my mental barriers. So I'm here to listen.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you, Gaganpreet. Anji, Gurdeep Singh Ji, Montreal. Are you with us?
One sec. Okay ji, Vaheguru ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki Fateh. I am very much convinced with Gagandeep's statement or whatever he feels, because I know it's totally one thing I agree. There's one Hukmi and Hukam, the two entity to me. The same Hukmi prevails into everybody. Naam, Hukam, Savad, and there's another term Sun. Their definition time to time is different, but they're one. Hukam, Naam, Savad, and Sun. Sun Samad Lagainda. Sati Jug Varte And Gavara. Tat Ran Surj Chand Andhara. If you read the Shabad, then it says Sun to Sara Sansar Pada Hai. Sun, the whole world was created from the Sun. Sun Samad. So Hukmi gave a Hukam. Ita Pasao, Eko Kawao, Tisto Lak Ravan, we repeated this thing. To me, yes, we are under the grip of Home. Home was also created by the same Hukmi at the same time. Everybody else, as we discussed last time, 84 million different lives, they are all under the Hukam. They are under the ordain of the Hukam, except the human life, human being. In human being, he has the only chance to get back to the source where it came from. But because the clutches of Maya, the grip of Maya, he is coming into egoistic consciousness, which is home, me. So now this is a game. Khel Akhada, Sab Tera Khel Akhada, jo Gurvani repeated many places. This is just a playground and the players. And the human being, as I said, the man is under the grip of Maya, so he thinks he is the stronger, he wants to do whatever he feel like, but he's wrong, he's mistaken. When he's in the womb, as Gagandeep said, he couldn't do anything by himself, so everything was under the hukam of the God. He was taken care very well for 9-10 months and all that. Even after that, when he comes out of the womb, the mother starts giving the milk and everything. So to me, it's if you want to know more about, we have to do meditation, we have to get intuitive with the Supreme Lord, we have to be in love with Him who has created everything. Then we start understanding more and more rather than reading from the books and here and there. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I did any mistake. This is how I feel. It has a total devotion. You have to even love. It's hard when you don't see anybody. How can you be in love with that? But you have to be in love with the actions. Everything will start working with you in your life. When you more meditate on Him, intuitive with Him, be loving with Him. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I did anything mistake.
Haji, Harvinder, has anyone else joined?
Naji, I think Gurjit Vidhi is still having the issue. He's not able to connect. So.
All right. So, interesting conversation here. The one thing that pops up in my head over and again as I listen to the conversation is the notion of a mistake, quote unquote, a mistake, Haume being under some sort of an illusion. So I want to ask you folks, now, when we began, I wanted you to suggest to me in very simple language, how do you know you're living in Hukam? How do you develop these qualities in order to know Hukam? Perhaps there's an easier way of explaining this. So, Dilpreet, I want to come back to you. I asked you, how would you explain this to your daughter? How would you put this out to her? So let's assume that we understand that there is a cosmic play where in order for us to have the kind of experience that we are having, Gurdeep Singh Viji referred to Khel Khada, a play. So you're on a stage, you're experiencing a certain sort of experience, a human experience. For that, it was necessary for Haume to be created, to be given to you. I mean, we know, and Tisre Padsha tells us that Haume was given to you. And that set in motion this whole process. And that is what causes our delusions. I mean, the idea is that we miss the mark over and over and over again. So what I'm suggesting is then realizing that it is really not me that is doing anything, but it is that one doer. Would that be the breaking of the spell? I just want to throw it out to you.
Right. See, Guruji says that, as Gaganpreet mentioned, right, that Naam, Hukam, and Shabad are there, they are related. Shabad is manifestation, or Shabad is the explanation which we need to follow. So now, yes, now if we go with that, when in Siddh Ghosts, when Guru Nanak Dev Ji was asked that who is your Guru, Guruji says, Shabad Guru Surt Tunchela. Now, again in Siddh Ghost, again the same question is asked in a different way. Kit Bid Purkha Janam Bataya, Kahe Ko Tuj Eh Chit Laya. Kit Bid Asa Mansa Khai, Kit Bid Jyot Nirantar Pai. Now, Bin Danta Kyun Khaiye Sar? And Nanak Sacha Kaho Vichar. Now, Guruji says, Satgur ke janam mein gavan mitaya. So he's saying Shabad is my Guru, and he's also saying that Satgur ke janam mein, that I am reborn. So reborn means it is that I am changed, and that I have started following or implementing Shabad in me. So now if I have to explain it to my daughter,
Yeah, how do you implement
right,
Shabad? How would you
right.
explain it to her?
So Shabad is nothing but Guru's teaching, and Guruji has not given us any finite teaching, or Guruji has not put any boundaries anywhere. That is the beauty of Guru Nanak. He has given us a framework to work with, and that is where he has said that we have to decide in which way we want to use that framework. Yes, we have to be truthful, we have to be loyal, we have to be kind. But now the traditional definitions, and as Gaganpreet was saying, that we have to break the barrier, right? The barrier is that we I think we believe that Guru Nanak was sent by Vaheguru, and he was guided, or everything was predefined that you go and do these things. Okay, and if that is true, then he is saying we think that he is a born Guru with all this message and all. But he is saying Shabad is my Guru, and 1430 pages has been written on Shabad. When we take Guru Gobind Singh Ji's life, it is full of challenges. Now, if everything is predefined and everything is decided, there is no free will, then these teachings and other things. So I always take, when I am explaining to my daughter, that these are the principles which we have to follow, and based on the situation we have to use this principle and make a best judgment and stand behind our judgment. And that is all I can say to kids, and when I discuss with them, that it is not that I have to sit this way, or it is not that I have to go inside and listen to the Shabad, and then that Shabad will guide me. I have to follow it in darkness and it will take me somewhere. Sorry if I'm hurting anybody's feeling. But it is the principles, the guidelines which we have to follow and use, and we use our brain and use all the knowledge around us. When Gautam Buddha was asked that who are you, he just said that I am an awakened person. We have to be aware of the situation. We see Guru Gobind Singh Ji's life, or any Guru's life. They were aware of the situation. Based on their awareness of the situation, whatever best decisions they can make, they made those decisions. They made those choices. So Guruji is giving us a framework. He is making us smarter. He is saying that don't rely on anyone. Ik bhi Mughal anna na hoya. He is saying that don't fall into those rituals. And he is taking us out from all those false beliefs which are prevailing at that time, or which are still prevailing today. And so he is telling, be aware of the situation and don't fall into these traps. Use your knowledge, consciousness, and these things, and he's giving us a framework to work with, and don't compromise on these principles, and make the best decisions and stand behind them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Eileen, I'm going to come to you, but with a follow-up question on what Dilpreet has just said. So when I hear him, what the sense I get is that he's talking in terms of a framework that has been given to us to make the right decisions. Here, it seems to me that it is much more of a reactive thing. You know, stuff is happening to you. You have a framework and you adapt or make the right choice depending on the situation, which may be one facet. Would there be another facet to this which says that you actually have to be a change agent, that you consciously make changes happen? What would you say?
I think it's somewhat the same thing because it's sort of the butterfly effect, I think.
Mm,
You don't know, in my vision of the way the universe sort of operates and why it's inexplainable, it's a kind of a chaos theory. There's an order that I cannot conceive. It exists there. There's some, creative origin, but it's pointless for me to try to understand it. It's pointless to me to try to make order out of, the death of my child or something horrific that happens. I'm presented with this as my life's reality. This is in some sense the Hukam that I observe in my life. And so the agent of change is happening constantly as I move anywhere and make any choice. My choice to be here today compared to being somewhere else, where maybe I could, save someone's life because I'm in a different situation. I mean, it's mind-boggling the permutations of all of my choices. So I narrow that sense I think, by focusing on the characteristics and cultivating that connection to the creator within and the guidance that I'm given. That's a principle-based guidance. It's not a rules-based guidance, because that allows me to go into the world in any of the situations, and I accept the hukum, and I have a guide in my mind, to listen to that creator within. So I think that's how it works.
thanks. Another quick question. Gurdeep Singh Virji talked about meditation. He talked about falling in love, saying that it was indeed difficult to love someone that you had no idea about. My question to you, and just as a follow-up on that is, and this is just what I'm thinking, would it be perhaps easier to say that falling in love with him is just a metaphor for saying to kind of plumb the depths of your own soul, your own potentials, the qualities that you're capable of? Would it be more, I suppose, germane to say that?
Um, I'm not sure how the falling in love metaphor works. I know that, my friends accused me of kind of falling in love with Gurbani because I started spending so much time and they couldn't understand. They're like, you have some sort of, what's the word for it? Like a affection. But,
Mm-hmm.
I think as it applies here, I think the significance of that is it's really powerful to think of falling in love as part of this path, because I think there's two reasons you could hold for living that principled life, right? One reason, and this applies to sort of that teaching kids
Yeah.
metaphor, right? So one reason is do it because I told you to, do it because this is the rule, do it because if you don't, there's a repercussion, or do it because if you do, there's a reward. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is a very unlove oriented approach to living that principled life. But if you're living the principled life because you love this connection to the creator that you find and you just want to express it, and it carries you through any kind of action, you're acting from that place of love instead of a place of pros and cons and cost benefit and some other reasoning, right? So I think the hardest thing in that conversation with kids is to cultivate the love by which, you don't have to have a material gain. You don't have to have all of this distraction from the Maya. You actually just come from a place of that love that's so hard to it's so hard. It's experiential, I think, and it's hard to just give instructions about it.
Okay, thank you. Gaganpreet Singh, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I want to continue from what Eileen just said. I think we are trying to get to a definition of hukam, and we keep jumping between Shabad and Gurbani and hukam. I think that the differentiation that is coming to me is that when we read Bani is not hukam. It is when my mind is in conversation with that Bani and it applies it to itself and then experiences life, then I can experience the hukam if I am in tune with Bani. If I'm not in tune with Bani, then I cannot, uh, you know, experience or bujda nahi hai main hukam nu life. The hukam is there. The Bani explains how it is, but I can only live it and know it. There is no definition of hukam that can be given that hey, this is how hukam is, and even Bani doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily.
but that is very clear, Gaganpreet. I mean, hukum keha na jaye. We
Yeah,
touched on that.
yeah,
I think we are just trying to find ways to figure out how we experience hukum.
and that
Uh, we are not really looking for any kind of definition, a narrow definition. We are just trying to exchange some thoughts on. We understand there cannot be any definition of hukam.
yeah, and
Uh,
so that's where I was trying to tend to where it was that we always assume that Bani is the Bani that we have outside in the form of Guru Granth Sahib. But when you alluded to plumbing the depths of our soul, that is where
yeah.
I think what Guru Sahib says, Turki Bani Ai, in Sagli Chint Mitai, that is where the true source of that Bani is. That is where the true Guru of Guru Nanak was. And if we are to find hukam in our life, it will not necessarily just be from the Bani. It will be when we build a true relation with that true source is when we will live this hukam. And for that we would have to look inwards, uh, keep ourselves in check through the practice of the Shabad, that is reading what the Bani says and trying to apply that in our life. And in that application process we will become more closer to that inner source and maybe fall in love, like we said, with that inner Ram that is within everybody, and then we will live in true hukam. So you
Thank
know,
you.
that would be.
Hanji, I know Virji Gurjeet Singh is on now. Is he on, Harvinder?
हाँ जी भाई साहब
Hanji. So, Virji, I know that you missed part of the conversation. So, what we were trying to do was to kind of keep this whole thing very simple because it can become quite esoteric. And so, my challenge to everyone was, how would you explain Hukam, its relationship to Haume, to a 17-year-old? So that's where I'm going to start with you.
so we have to take lead from Gurbani because no one else have ever understood Hukam except the Bhagats. And then they put another restriction. They say Nanak Hukam je bujhe. Means bujna is really, until you are in the Hukam yourself, a part of that Hukam, it's really, a tough thing. But there are indications, as in Gurbani, they say, Aya likh le javna pyare, hukmi hukum pashan. This is an advice that you have to recognize the hukam of the hukmi. So the hukam is coming from a hukmi. Until we distinguish between these two things and then who is hukmi, we won't be able to solve the riddle. Then Gurbin hukum na bhujiye pyare. So Gurbani is nothing but trying to explain the hukam. Now there are two hukams. If we know that, there is a hukam in which the universe was created. And there is a hukam. Hukam is ichha. And then there is also hukam of the jeev. Hukam kiye man paamde. So until we understand this, there is a very famous Shabad by Kabir ji. And if we can solve that one, we should be able to resolve the issue, I think. Gaudi Rag, which he has given us Shabad number 42. He says, Chagda ek nibedo Ram. The controversy is between the Ved and the Simriti. And we are still, whatever I was listening, we are purely propagating a Simriti Gyan. It's not our fault, because anyone who previously followed, they followed the same thought process. But there is a controversy, Kabir ji says, Jo tu apne jan ko kaam. The first question he raises, A man vadda ke jasyo man manya. One part is very clear, but jasyo man manya is nothing but Guru Prasad. The man is not bigger, he says. There is something else supreme to this man. And we are confused in that entity. And he has tried to resolve it. We think we will go directly into Shabad Guru. I don't think so. Guru Bani never says you can ever go into Shabad Guru. Dilpreet Singh has indicated that Shabad Guru Surtun Chela, and then he says, Satgur ke janme gavan mitaya. It's the janam of your Satgur which will take you to Sachkhand, but you have to go and merge with your Satgur. This man, a man vadda, he has to go into the next supreme one. Then what's next to him? So Gurbani says, Jasyo man manya. Yes, Gurbani tells us that Gur Shabad has got a power, and then there's a Shabad Guru. These two things are different. Turki Bani, Gurbani is not Turki Bani. Turki Bani is different, is a direct Shabad, but Gurbani is the wordly form of Turki Bani. Gurbani has Maya in it, Turki Bani is Anhad Nad, which we don't listen, but we only have the copy of it here in the form of words. The second question then he poses, Ram Badda ke Ram mein janne. Now, when he starts Man, the bigger entity than Man is the Ram. Then he says, is someone bigger than Ram? He says, yes, who has understood the Ram is bigger than Ram. And Ram is not Vaheguru. Ram is our own mool. So, it's nothing but Puran Brahm. So, we have a Man, then we have a Brahm, then we have a Puran Brahm. So, there are three entities here. Until we resolve these issues and understand clearly, I think we'll always be hassling around. And then he says, Brahma Badda ke Jasupaya. Brahma is not supreme, but he has born out of a Brahm. Brahm is supreme, because even in the few places, Aisi Istri ka Ram Upa. Three entities. Then Ved Badda ke jahan te aaya. Although Gur Shabad is bigger than both of these, Puran Brahm and Brahm, but then where does the Gur Shabad comes from? The Gur Shabad comes from Par Brahm. So we have got, if you just draw a clear map, there's a Man, then there's Man's Mool Brahm, then both of them become Brahma, and then there's a Gur Shabad, and then Gur Shabad is coming from the Par Brahm, which is Hukam. So this is a sort of structure we have to build in our minds. I know it is hard, it's not written anywhere, but if you go deep, this is what you will get. Then from there, it's easy to explain. Yep. So I have.
Acha ji, Haji, and I can assure you that no 17-year-old is going to understand that, unfortunately, which just tells me that this is an extremely complex thing to understand. Perhaps it's more experiential. It's something to be experienced rather than understanding.
Yeah, one small point I wanted to make was, by assuming that, 17 years old need something very short, a 30-second snippet of this, we might actually be disrespecting them. Because I have, and this is purely coming from my experience dealing with younger people in the Gurbani Vichar groups that we drive over here. Younger people are very keen and very sharp, and when we dumb things down for them, they think that this is all that you've got, and they reject you. And I have had great success with my peers and younger people by dealing with the questions in their full depth. And frankly, it's not an easy job. It's not that easy to dive into Gurbani, and it cannot be brought down into a 30-second snippet. So that there is that, if it were that simple, there would have been a 30-second snippet somewhere in the Guru Granth Sahib for Hukam. and we would have had that to learn from.
हाँ जी रविंद्र जी all yours now.
No, I'm sorry. My system just crashed. But I picked up a little bit on what Gaganpreet was saying. I mean, the tail end of what he was saying, and I don't necessarily agree with him because my sense is that we are responsible for creating, finding ways. I know there are no 30-second snippets in Gurbani, but that's not the point. The point is we have to create tools, we have to create mechanisms, we have to be creative. And I think we are not being creative. We, meaning I'm looking at myself in the mirror and saying, why is it that we can't, you and I don't need the motivation. We are obviously motivated enough to come here. The point is, where is the generation that is growing up? Why aren't they interested in this very fascinating, wondrous, beautiful world of Gurbani? Why aren't they? What can we do to attract them to it? And you're not going to be able to do that by giving them long discussions and lectures and tuks from Gurbani. You have to speak to them in their language. So the challenge is really ours, is to find that way to make it interesting to them, to at least get started. The idea is not to give them answers. You see, this is where we fail. We tend to want to give answers. That's not the point. The idea is to get them interested and let them find their own answer. That's what I was trying to say. Okay,
So
very well. Then I think the idea is to move on to Kabirji's Bhavan Akri. And with that, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki
Right.
Fateh.